And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down.
Yeah. Canucks is never calm, Tyler. Never calm. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, and as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. And that means we have an ad read. Hang on one second. Let me pull this up here. 3 years in professional broadcasting and can't pull up a ad read on a live podcast. That's what training is. Sorry, just a little slow. While we're doing that, hello, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, Kev. Yeah. We've gotten past the trade deadline. It's now draft lottery simulator season.
Yep.
Honestly, I've had to mute a couple accounts that have been doing it nonstop. I just can't handle it. The only lottery simulators I want is that for the ones that can tell me the lottery numbers so I can retire early. That's what I want.
Yes, I could use those as well. But there's also, with player props and live betting, Sean, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. You could even bet on the draft lottery simulator. And you customers, you can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Yes, so we are the last podcast out there probably to review the trade deadline, and just because of schedule and personal things and all of that, it's okay. We're probably going to be the smartest. Anyway, let's recap what happened at the trade deadline. As it's I just in general, I think people's expectations on this trade deadline were way too high. And I told everybody that this was going to be a very
we all did. I think you and I were on last week. We both said to keep your expectations low.
Yeah. Yeah. The excitement is always at around noon, or in this case, just in Calgary, afternoon, when the Nazem Kadri deal went down, and then everybody was waiting for the return. Although everybody kind of knew, I knew something was up there just before we get to the Canucks. I knew something was up when the Ryan Strome trade happened. I'm like, I think Kadri's getting moved. But anyway, what did the Canucks do? They traded Tyler Myers for a second-round pick in 2027 and a 2029 fourth-round pick, and retained 50%. That was done on the Tuesday before. Of course, we knew Tyler Myers was waiting for something. His priority was Dallas, as is his right with no movement clauses. And of course, there was a reported, everyone thought that Detroit was in was the trade that sat Tyler Myers down. He was waiting for Dallas. And so they got a player with term out of there. And then they got another player with term. And his name was kind of percolating around for a while. But Connor Garland was finally traded to Columbus. It's a third-round pick in 26, a second in 28. And the key in this trade is that there's no salary retained. Columbus is taking all of the salary. So that is a benefit for the Canucks in the off season. And then Taven Camp for a sixth-round pick in 26. And then Lucas Reichel, the long-awaited Lucas Reichel, was traded to Boston for a sixth-round pick in 26. And then they claimed a very tall man named Curtis Douglas off waivers from St. Louis. The complaints out there because we have to add them, is that the Canucks did not trade Evander Kane. I'm just going to say, I told you. And they did not trade Teddy Bluger. So, Sean, what are your takeaways from this trade deadline from a Canucks perspective?
I was surprised that they were able to move Garland. We had started to hear Tyler Myers around for a little bit, but Connor Garland was someone who doesn't even have his next contract kicked in yet. So I wasn't sure if that they were going to be able to do that. But doing that now really helps, because he, as of July 1, he would have had at least some sort of trade protection. So they were able to move him before he started gaining control on that. And yeah, it truly kickstarted and kicked off the rebuild. I think people may argue that the Sherwood was, but once you start moving players with term, whether it's 1 year left after this year with Tyler Myers, or I can't wait, a long-term contract that Connor Garland has, that's when you know that things are starting to they're really starting to embrace the rebuild. And I think you have to applaud the Canucks for that. I know a lot of people wanted more, and I think that, again, as we just mentioned, I think that was more wishful thinking than anything else. There's only so many moves that can happen, and especially with this year, as we had mentioned in last week before the deadline as well, with the changes to the rules regarding how much cap, how players are. Cap is retained. You can't do the quick double. You can't do the quick double retention anymore, and as well as the cutting back of the papering down players to the AHL. They have to play at least one game before being called back up. So teams were no longer doing that, or able to do that. So there was a lot less flexibility for a lot of the contenders, as well as the I don't think we even touched on this last week, Kev, but as well as the salary cap within the playoffs now.
Yep, we did not.
Yes, so teams can't load up as the way they used to be able to. So yeah, those three factors alone, in the first year of all three of those kicking in, it was going to be a slower deadline.
A lot of teams don't have their first round picks either. So you saw a lot of second round picks being traded. And of course, there is a conditional first round pick involved with the Nick Waugh and Nazem Kadri, but there was not a lot of first round picks that were traded in this trade deadline. It's can we talk about the Teddy Bluger complaint for a moment here? Because I really this is the one that got me, is the fireable offense of Teddy Bluger not being traded. I am of the opinion that if you do not get the value that you should get for a player, even if it is an unrestricted free agent. And by the way, this is the school of thought from Brian Burke. So I'm not bringing anything original to the table here. I'm literally bringing a Brian Burke old school. Even if you don't get the value for the player, you should not make that trade. And the reason I think that is important is because for future trades, you need to stand your ground, right? And I know that people were upset that they could not trade Teddy Bluger, and there's talk about possibly extending him. I don't think that this is is this a terrible idea? Is this a ground-shaking, franchise-shaping move? Teddy Bluger is a bottom six forward who I do think can help the team next year and going forward. I think that you should be able to get more than a 6th-round pick for Teddy Bluger, and I think you do have to hold firm to what your stance is. And I do believe that that's what Patrick Allvin is trying to do. In the midst of the horrible quote he said with Brock Besser last year, it kind of the whole situation was a mess. That was his point. Is the value for what you were going to get for Brock Besser in an unrestricted free agency wasn't necessarily going to help the team. And by the way, people forget this. you can trade unrestricted free agents before the draft. You can trade their negotiation rights, and you can get a 6th-round pick if you want that particular point in time. There was no real point in doing it at this point. I don't know if you see it the same way or not, but that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah, his quote. Alvin made another quote after this deadline saying that there's no offers on Bluger, which I think is we're wading into the semantics of things. We're wading into the what does he mean, and this, that, and what does someone else mean by an offer? I don't think they got that. Yeah, I don't think they got an offer that made sense. I don't think they got an offer that they considered serious. Which again, I think if you can't just trade away players and for a lot less than what you think they're worth. And I do think Bluger has talked about how he wants to stay. And I think the Canucks would like to bring him back. He's 31. He'll turn 32 in August, I believe. And you sign him into a 1 or 2 year deal, and you'll still be able to flip him at next deadline.
Yep.
So this isn't a make or break thing. This is not a quote unquote fireable offense. And I think people need to. It's using terms like that is loud for the sake of being loud, and there's so much that we need to stop that. We need to be willing to have good having nuanced conversations. Because I saw a fireable offense with regards to Alvin. When was it the Garland or Besser conversations with the Islanders? How they did not want to take back any. They did not want to retain, and they did not want to take back a long-term contract. Because when you look at the Islanders, I got into it on social media, and it was against someone calling it a fireable offense. Like, no, it's not, because when you look at who's available on the Islanders and who they would have wanted to ship back to the Canucks, it's not worth bringing those players in. It's not.
No.
Because it was going to be Duclair or Drouin, who both have had not great seasons. Both have multiple years left on their deals. Yeah, the idea that you can rehab them and swap them's great, but I think that part of the problem with especially social media and everything is the armchair GMing and everything. Everyone's looking at the optimal rebuild, the perfect rebuild, the optimal move, the perfect move here, when 99% of the time you don't get that. And then, so they're yelling and screaming about that. Then the Canucks get a 2nd and a 3rd for Garland from Columbus, and they didn't have to take any bad contracts back or retain. So
that's it's not a player, but that's a key, right? You're removing the salary and the term is key, I think.
And yes, I think there might be some of that being ownership not wanting to have more money on the books than they want, because they know they're going into a rebuild, and they know that ticket sales are going to be deflated because of that. There's probably that, but show me an owner who would not be pushing for that.
Yeah, exactly. And
and I think part of it too, Kev, is there is this tunnel vision. Every fan base has this tunnel vision of, well, again, as it's the perfect and the optimal moves that need to be made, and without looking at the external factors. So, like I said, if not trading Bluger, I think in an ideal world, you do trade Bluger, you get a 4th round pick for him. But again, what's the difference between Oh, like once you get into that middle of the draft, it's an absolute crapshoot. You can have the best draft scouting in the world, but if you don't develop them properly, it's not going to work. You can have the best development in the world, but you don't have the scouting. You miss on the scouting, it's not going to work. You could have everyone scouted properly, and all the guys that you want get drafted just before you. Like it's such a crapshoot at that point. But yeah, I think it's if you look at what they did, I think there was some previous move mitigation, like that you kind of look at like whether they traded a fourth for Reichel and got a sixth back.
Yeah.
So that's a net loss, unfortunately. But they also signed David Kampf for free this year and got a sixth back for him. So I think you're looking at at least an even trade there in terms of like assets in, assets out. So I think, yeah. So the difference between a fourth and a sixth in the long term isn't really that much, but you still need to hold firm on a player like Bluger because it looks better. Honestly, it just looks better that you're holding firm when it comes to future negotiations.
And just on the Bluger part, the same people that would be bitching about the fact that they only got a six for Bluger, if he went on a playoff run, and I do believe he would have helped a team in the playoffs, it would be, you only got a six for Teddy Bluger? Really? And Jason Dickinson got a first? That tweet is already set up in somebody's corner there. So that's
even though Dickinson did not get a first.
A conditional first.
He didn't though. That he was a throw-in on that trade to get Mangiapane off the books.
Yeah, that's fair, but
it's the same as the Leafs trading the first round pick that turned into Seth Jarvis for Carolina to buy out Patty Marleau.
Yeah,
that's what that was.
Yeah,
Jason Dickinson was a throw-in.
Yeah. What was I going to say? On rebuilds, by the way, I do recommend that you go onto a podcast, and I know that I work with the company, so this is shameless plug, but I don't work at Sportsnet 650, but I will recommend that people find the interview that Halford and Bruff did with Eric Engels from the Montreal Canadiens this morning on Tuesday morning, if you're listening after, because he talks about what happened in Montreal. And one of the things that he said that I thought was really interesting is he said culture outweighs talent. And he did not talk about all these brilliant moves that the Montreal Canadiens have made over the years. He talked about how the culture has changed in Montreal. He talked about how one of the things that he said, the other thing that he said was really interesting is how he notices in Vancouver how things feel like a press conference for players and how relaxed it now is in Montreal and how dark it was under the Marc Bergevin area and how things change. He talked a lot more about culture than making all of these moves that everybody is keen on making to design your rebuild. And I'm a firm believer that it is about culture. That is what needs to always change first before you build your team. You have to figure out your culture. You need to figure out your identity. So that I'd recommend just go back and listen to that interview because Eric Engels provided a really interesting perspective on all of that situation over there. And I think it does I mean, if you think that Montreal is a standard to rebuild, great. You can look at all the moves, but I would recommend you listen to that Engels interview. It's very, very interesting there. Yeah. So Evander Kane, the other player that was not traded, he's going to play his 1,000th game as a Canuck eventually before the season's out. And I think. Do you think do you think Evander Kane finds a team next year?
He'll be on a PTO next year.
I think that's kind of.
I'll try. Like we saw Lucic get PTOs and everything. It'll be similar, I think.
Yeah. A couple a couple of other transactions. 6'9" Curtis Douglas joined the team, and I think that one of the things that I think is just appealing about this, quite simply, Sean, is he's 6'9". I'm not saying that this is a guy that is going to be the star, but I think that there's one of the things that I think that one of the takeaways this year has just been the lack of, I don't want to say toughness, just lack of pushback in
Well,
some ways.
again, goes back to culture, Kev.
Yeah.
Goes back to culture. You don't need big giants to protect people. What you need is a culture of we stand up for each other, and the Canucks have not had that. Like, even going back to the 23-24 season, they didn't really have that either. That's not been part of it, and they need to find that.
Yeah.
So maybe, like, and Douglas isn't necessarily like the best fighter or anything like that, but you need to find. I think it just goes back to, as you talked about, culture. They need to, especially now that like you're fully in the rebuild. You need to embrace that, and you need to embrace growing as a team. So, like, the start of a rebuild is always so interesting because, like, depending on what the team looks like and the vibes and everything. And with the vibe, I think the reason why you're having a lot of people pushing for a as quick a dismantle as possible is to help with the culture, is to help reset the locker room that was, for lack of a better term, toxic. Like, we were completely wrong on the last season with the whole P.D. Miller thing, saying it was overblown and all that. You look back at it now,
Yeah,
and it was toxic, and it is permeated out of there and into how the media talk with the players and how the players talk with the media, and the combativeness of it because of everything. So if you can find a way to reset this, reset everything and reset the vibes and the culture and everything, you'll start having the us against the world mentality that these kids need to have, that are gonna be part of this rebuild.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, yeah, and I think clearly just the emotion in that room. You saw the way that Quinn Hughes came out of the gates in Minnesota, and in some ways how Connor Garland has come out of the gates of Columbus. It feels like they're playing with a little bit more freedom. So I mean, I don't like, the one thing I will say is I think that there's a lot of people to, I don't think like the finger pointing on each side here is, we can 6-7 this if we want, but I think that there's a number of people to blame in this situation, unfortunately. People have criticized Quinn Hughes for his captainship. I get it. I just don't. I mean, I think there wasn't a lot of support around him to handle a situation that that a lot of people would have found tough, even if they were 7-year veterans. I mean, this is not the first time that two teammates have been in a publicly embroiled feud in the National Hockey League. This has happened before. This is not original content. It just permeated and affected everybody in the room, and it just, unfortunately, they need a fresh build in that locker room. They need a fresh, and I think, Sean, ultimately, one of the people that I think needs that fresh start, and I'm not saying that you need to retain salary on him, Sean, but I think Pettersson probably needs a refresh. I think this is a guy that has been emotionally, this has been tough on him. I think nobody's talked about this enough. I think people need to remember when we're talking about EP40 this year, he lost a kid. He lost a child earlier this year. That has a tremendous emotional impact. And I just will add, you add that to what he went through with JT Miller, and I think the way that Rick Tocchet treated him as well, which I think there's some legitimate criticism there, and all of the stuff that he's been dealing with here in Vancouver. This is a guy that could use a fresh start.
He could. Whether that fresh start could still be with the Canucks next year if they get one of the top 2 picks and are getting McKenna or Stenberg. Because when you look at, like, it's just been since Tocchet came in, it feels like Pettersson has not had the right line mates. Since they got rid of Kuzmenko, they have not been able to find the right chemistry and the right line mates for him.
Would you be opposed to bringing Kuzmenko back?
No. At this point, like, they're in a rebuild. And part of that is trying to find a way to either unlock Petey enough that he can be part of that rebuild, or unlock him enough that they can trade him without retaining and for a decent amount, a good return. So you have to find different ways to do it. You have to be open to that, and I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. I don't think anyone who is opposed to that I don't think is fully thinking about the whole picture here.
I mean, one of the things that I think needs to happen, and can I just toss what's happening in Calgary a little bit? One of the things that Calgary has done pretty well is they got a couple of guys that they break the ice in the media, and one of them is Devin Cooley. The other one is Ryan Lomberg. I think that the Canucks need someone like that in that room to break the ice, to provide a little bit of humor. I haven't heard a laugh out of Vancouver in a long time. And I think that that's something that could really just kind of break this tension. And Kuzmenko can do that.
Kuzmenko can do that. Jake DeBrusk was supposed to be that, but like, just with everything else, you need to bring someone from the outside that hasn't been through all of this to be able to do that. Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's not just with the media either. It's in the locker room.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the issue in Vancouver is that it and maybe this is me just being so jaded to a lot of this right now, but it feels so media centric. It feels like every day they have to do media. Every day they have to do that. They have to have microphones shoved in their face, and they have to answer the same questions over and over. And I understand that that's part of the animal that things are now, but at this point, I think you need to start finding a way to taking the burden off of some of these guys that way, and trying to rotate players through to do that and protect them from that.
Now, there's going to be there's a group of people, and Patrick Maroon talked about it around the Toronto. Was it Patrick Maroon?
Patrick Maroon, yeah.
Yeah, it was Patrick Maroon that talked about this in Toronto, and a lot of people are pushing back on him, saying it's like you're being soft. But he talked about that in Toronto, how it's so intense, and I actually can see. Call me soft. I actually can see this, because like going to the rink, coming to your, like, I don't know, Sean, when you go to work, do you want to talk to the media for 5 to 10 minutes and then like that just add to part of your day? Like, what if you're having a bad day? What if you had a fight with your spouse? What if you like just are dealing with a whole bunch of crap? Like, I just think people want to have their own private life, right? I kind of can see where people are coming from.
Because the problem is in markets like Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal, when things go bad, it doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
You can't say anything right. It's going to turn into a clusterfuck shit show no matter what is said. And in today's day and age with social media, it's not like it quiets down after a day. It gets amplified and it gets spread and it gets skewed to, and then when you have in those three markets specifically, because they're so hyper focused on one team, and they all three of them have a sports radio station, let alone all the different shows, the independent shows and the podcasts like us. But everyone needs to get their 2 cents in, so it doesn't actually calm down. Back before all this, when there was maybe one show a day, or even just like the radio and like the blogs and podcasts, and the social media wasn't nearly as intense either as well. It wasn't as peaks and valleys, and like the highs weren't as high, the lows weren't as low, and people weren't so overly connected so that they spend every day arguing the same 5 points
And repeating them.
and then a lot of people say, well, they can just turn off and not have social media. Okay, what about their friends and their family that are probably like, let alone the fact that we live in such a digital connected age that like it, and we all grew up doing it. Like, that's the thing, is like, you and I can, like, I just turned 40. I'm a man. I'm 40. Come at me.
Yeah.
But we like instead of growing up, like my adult life has all been digital. Like, yeah, let alone all these guys now. Like, Petey's 27. Like, that's all he knows is having a smartphone in his hand as his communication tool.
Yeah. I think the NHL in general needs to improve this overall. And I because I look back at the NFL, and you look back at, of course, we've been kind of talking NHL, NFL because of free agency season and all of that. But like the NFL, there is specific times that you get to talk to players and coaches. Like, you talk to the quarterback, as an example, you talk to them on Wednesday or Thursday. Coach, you talk on Wednesday. Like, there's specific times for that. And I think that the NHL needs to look into that model as well. Like,
it's easier in the NFL because it's only one game a week.
Yes.
But I do agree with you, Kev. I do think that there's an oversaturation of every day after practice, the coach has to talk. Every day after practice, players have to talk. And God forbid, if you close a practice, how dare you? How dare you take away the? No, more isn't always better.
Well, it's just tough on the play. Like it's tough on the players, and we'll get into the GM and the coaching part about this too. But one of the things I think also needs to happen going forward is, I wonder if we need to hear more from assistant GMs and more from assistant coaches as well going forward. I mean, we hear from
the Canucks did try that under Tocchet and a little bit underfoot as well here with having assistant coaches do pregame stuff. But I don't even think it's that, Kev. I think it's just, you just need to cut back on the media availability, period.
Yeah, I think it has to be examined here. Like, I really do think that. I think it is a mental exhaustion for players, And before someone, and one of them might be Tyler, because I know he's had that point. I understand they're making millions of dollars, but it's still a mental health issue. And I do think that I think we need to just have an examination of it and look at it to see if it's better. I mean, like a couple of weeks ago, EP40, he said something in the media a lot of people felt was really curt. And then I know that somebody compared this to a slumping player on the Vancouver Whitecaps, which I think was can't remember the guy's name right now off the top of my head. And Farhan Lalji broke the two down. Here's the one thing that I would respond to. Pettersson talks to the media every day. The Whitecaps player does not. So if you were expecting Pettersson to have this standard of the Whitecaps player, I mean, he's taking a toll. Like, you have to add that into the conversation. I don't know how to, I don't like, that's, it takes a toll. It does, especially when you're losing, especially when you're slumping.
Yeah. As we said, I think he needs this whole, like, that's part of this rebuild is resetting the culture, resetting the vibes. You want players to be happy to go in, happy to go into practice, to go to games, and not feel this existential dread, not feel the existential dread of having to talk with the media and wondering what question is going to get thrown at them 8 ways to Sunday over and over.
Yeah, and I also think too, the fact of the matter is they're finishing in 32nd place. A bunch of people want them to finish in 32nd place because they get the chances are they'll get a higher pick. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. And there's not a lot at this point that there's going to a lot of topics to talk about with the Canucks as we enter the season, other than the draft lottery simulator. Yeah. So.
And honestly, I think going down this stretch, it should be about seeing how some of these younger players are developing and if they can take bigger roles. That's what I want to see.
Yeah,
I want to see if Marco Rossi can be a play driving center that can hold his own line. I want to see if Liam Ogren can develop more and become more of maybe even a top 6 option for the Canucks going forwards. I want to see more from Linus Karlsson and Max Sisson, and I want to see if they can develop. I want to see more of Ratu. That's the one thing that I want to. I'm kind of miffed on is how little he's played. I want to see if Z Buyam can take over the number 1 power play unit as a quarterback, or at least push Hronek in that position. I want to see Tom Villander and Victor Mancini and D. Petey continue to play well and develop and become more confident in the reads. Like, that's the thing when you're watching rebuild teams, it's not about the wins and losses. You have to go to you have to look at player by player. Honestly, you gotta watch the games like every time Williams on the ice, every time Villander's on the ice, every time Liam Ogren and Marco Rossi's are on the ice. Like, I want to see. The other guy I want to see have a good end of the season is Niels Höglander, because again, he could be an option for long term with this team. He could be, but he could also be a decent trade chip if they can get his game going again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too bad Lila Karamecki got injured, because seeing him would have been something that fans could be at least look forward to going to watch. Because that's the thing the weird thing about this team is, like, when you look at least the roster right now, all the top, like, outside of Liam Ogren, who's 22, you've got a bunch of mid-20s and older guys. Like, I guess Ratu's 23, and Rossi's 24. But the rest are 25 and older. but you don't have any like true like young stud forwards on this roster right now to look forward to go watching it. But you've got William, who's 20, Villander 21, DPD 22. All like, let alone Mancini's still only 23, like on the blue line, and so that's it. But it's not as exciting, right?
No, but still, it's important, and that's part of the identity of the team. Before we get to the big news today, I just at this point, I mean, I don't know what much more there is to evaluate on this situation, but let's go through the three names and see if they're back. We'll start with the coach. Do you see Adam Foote back next year?
I'm leaning to probably yes, but I would prefer not. I think it's time to get. I think it's literally. I know it sucks because that just means another new coach and a new voice for a lot of these players. But he was part of this team, like the whole Miller, Petey, Hughes debacle. He was part of it. I think at least on the bench, I want to see a fresh start there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I kind of thought that maybe this would be an interesting guy, but that it hasn't. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked. Patrick Allvin.
With both Allvin and Rutherford, I want to see what they're going to do here. Like, what are the other options here? Like, they hadn't embraced the rebuild until now. And I think it's fair when you listen to what Rutherford has said, especially on this last 100% hockey interview with John Shannon and Darren Millard.
That's a really good interview. That was the best.
It's very good.
For Rutherford. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't leave listening to that interview while like groaning about whatever. But like the talk about he wasn't going to rebuild it as long as he had like Miller and Hughes, and once the both of them are gone, he's okay. Let's rebuild. Let's see what they can do. Like, because the other option is you bring in someone else who's most likely not going to have much in the way of experience. You're not going to have someone who, what other options are there? Oh, I know. It's Chris Pronger, Kevin. It's Chris Pronger. Because bringing in an ex-player who's making money on TV really worked well to do the coaching.
Yeah. In Philadelphia as well, they're really loving Rick Tocchet right now.
And what Pronger's like the threat of what Pronger's. What makes you think that these guys are Rutherford and Allvin are not going to commit to that right now, anyways?
Here's what if you're not going to leave from Allvin, and I see your side, but the other side that I would say is, I have to question where Rutherford and Allvin in the handling. I mean, I don't know do they have a responsibility in this whole debacle? I mean, that's hard to say. I don't know. But I wonder if we need to hear a little bit more from Cami Granato.
What's she going to say, Kev? That's going to be any different? Again, this goes back to our talk about the media. I don't think we need to hear more. Sorry, Kev, let me finish. I don't think we need to hear more from anyone in these in these management teams and coaching staffs. We just need results.
Sometimes you can say the same thing in a different way and it comes off fresh.
But she's still been part of this whole thing. She was one of the first hires that they had.
Yeah. Okay. So you think Rutherford and Allvin you think they're back? I
don't honestly. I have no idea, Kat. But like personally, I don't. I don't understand why you would why you would pull the trigger on them right now.
Okay.
Tell yes, this was building before they took over. Honestly, if we're being honest, this was building before they took over. The biggest, we've talked about this, before. In my opinion, the biggest mistake they made was moving on from Bo Horvat.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not necessarily, I know you can go back and say there was questions about his leadership and all that, but when they did that, because he was groomed for that captaincy role, when they did that, they created a leadership vacuum that Miller took over, and just it set the Canucks on course for a very volatile explosion, which is what we got. Yeah, they had that one season that everything went right, but it just was not. Once you gave Miller that kind of role, it was going to explode. So I think yes, they do deserve criticism for how they've handled things, but we're also going in a completely different direction. I think they deserve to at least see what this looks like, to at least handle the another season of this and see if they can move some players out in the summer when you're looking at a very thin unrestricted free agent class. They could load up on picks.
Yep. Yeah,
so I know there's some comparisons between where the Flames were at, or where the Flames are at, and the Canucks are at in the rebuilds. The Flames started rebuilding, despite what everyone says. They started rebuilding a season and a half ago. They started rebuilding when they sold off Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov to the Canucks.
Yeah, they never said it, and yes, they have the edge.
But the moves say that they did. Just because they didn't say the right rebuild word in the right way for everyone to be happy with it doesn't mean they haven't been making the right rebuild moves.
Yeah, and it's important context here because the Canucks at that time, the Flames were in the sell mode, the Canucks were in buy mode. They bought Elias Lindholm at the time because they believed that they were in for going for a lengthy run in the playoffs. And I think that there's a future debate about how all of that was handled. And I think that there's actually some criticism that I have to Rutherford and Alvin of how all of that was handled. But the fact of the matter is you're right. The Flames were in sell mode. The Canucks were in buy mode at that particular point in time. And even through that Miller trade, yes, they were probably in a rebuild mode, but they were also not far out of a playoff spot at that time. So when they're making that Miller trade and the Pettersson trade, which I do think there's a valid criticism where people are saying that they should have probably kept that first round pick for Marcus Pettersson. I understand that criticism. I think that's valid. I don't necessarily.
That's a hindsight. Hindsight is 2020 criticism for sure.
Yeah.
I think, but everyone also expected that move too.
Yeah, they
expected that first round to be to be burning a hole in Alvin's wallet, and he was going to move it pretty quickly, and he did.
Yeah, So really, to me, I think that the official rebuild started when Quinn Hughes was traded. That's when I think that it started. That's the trade that lifted this off, and everything else after that has been with that in mind. Because they traded Kiefer Sherwood in January for 2 second-round picks in San Jose, and then you trade Tyler Myers for picks, and you traded Connor Garland for picks, and Kemp and Lucas Reichel, and so it's we will discuss in the offseason kind of where the Flames are out of the rebuild and where the Canucks are out of the rebuild. But I think the one thing that I would say with people that are like, well, look at the Flames are way ahead of the Canucks is the fact is they are ahead because they started before. So
they started before, but I also think when you look at where the Canucks are at with some of the players that are already playing on the NHL roster in their early 20s, yeah, the Flames have Matt Vigrid. They've got Zane Parekh. Is Connor Zary still young enough? He probably is. But
Dan might be right on Connor Zary. I think I've been higher on Connor Zary than he was. He did not believe in him, and
they got well. Yeah, so yeah, if you look at them, they've got Greedon. They've got Zary's 24. They've got Matt Coronado, who's 23, and then you've got Zane Parekh and Dustin Wolf, and then you've got Hunter Brstevich, who's gotten some games, and then they've got a bunch of like players who haven't hit yet.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I said with the Canucks. They had Lekaramaki have some games this year, and then they've got all those blue liners. So it's just because they're ahead in like the amount of like picks or first round picks that they have doesn't necessarily mean that they're ahead in the long term rebuild, because you still have to hit those picks. Still have to hit, and you still have to develop them, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Let's do a quick ad read, and then we'll get to the practice facility talk, and then the rest of the trade deadline here. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code XXX. That's code XXX to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 8778-HOPNY or text HOPNY. Connecticut, call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expires in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible game resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026. NHL. All rights reserved. Yeah, so the news today, or the news that came out on Tuesday, is the potential, according to Irfan Ghaffar, of the practice facility. And this has been an area that, well, first of all, everyone's been talking a little bit about the practice facility, but it's been on the back burner for last little bit. But this area in Britannia in Vancouver, which for those that do not live in Vancouver, is sort of in between the Pacific Coliseum, where the Vancouver Golden Knights play, and Commercial Broadway Station, which is a trendy-ish place in Vancouver. It's about, in terms of driving distance from Rogers Arena, it's about 9 minutes. Traffic being traffic of what it is in Vancouver. So I think it's good news that there is a progress on this. I know that there's going to be some people that are going to have some criticism on this, because there always is. But I'll get, maybe before I talk, Sean, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I'm glad that they're making progress here. I know dealing with real estate prices the way they are and everything. Yes, I know Ackley is a real estate mogul dude, whatever. But like, it's tough. It's tough sledding these days, and I think it took a lot longer than I think everyone wanted. But I'm glad that it's getting done here.
Well, and I think that for people that like wanted this to rush, things are taking forever in Vancouver to be built. I know this as a person that talks about traffic. Example, the Broadway subway project, which was supposed to be done by pretty close to now. We're looking at 2028. You've got like a bunch of closures still on Broadway, which is a pain in the ass for people. And the other thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of closures coming up here for FIFA around this couple of SkyTrain stations around Stadium Chinatown and around a couple of those at Yaletown Roundhouse and around BC Place, which is going to cause a bit of a headache. So just things are just taking forever. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I do think that if I was a business in Broadway Subway area that has lost a lot of money because of this construction, I wonder how I'm feeling about this. But again, I think that we're in the process, and I'm probably talking a little too early, and I would like to see the details of this before we go forward. But it's not a bad area. I mean, it's like in terms of location, it's not a bad area. There's going to be situations in every area in Vancouver, unfortunately, with the way that the economy is. That's just part of Vancouver, unfortunately. But it's in a good area, so we'll see what happens. And yeah, I think
it shouldn't be that in terms of what any construction or anything. I doubt it's going to be that invasive to the area.
No, it's not in an area where it is. Like it looks like if I have my details,
the rink's already there. Like they're probably gonna upgrade it. They're gonna add in like some other amenities and everything. And I remember seeing there are people worried about that taking away a rink from the public. There's only so much ice time the Canucks need.
Yeah.
The only issue would be pricing of the ice. Again, it all comes down to fucking money. But in terms of it's still going to be like the ice is still going to be accessible to other teams, organizations, and leagues. Because I'm 90%, like when the Canucks were practicing out of 8 rinks, it wasn't a monopoly on that rink. When I'm pretty sure that the Oilers that community rink that they practice in is, guess what? It's a community rink. So I think some people, if you're worried about that, I think that's a fair worry. But I'm 99% sure that like outside of the time that the Canucks are there practicing, it's going to be open for others to use. And it's honestly going to upgrade that arena. It's going to upgrade that facility to make it better for the people using it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Scotia Place in Calgary, there is a public arena in that arena as well, or some sort of practice.
Yeah, there is there'll be a practice facility there, and again, it will be accessible to the public to be used. It will be used. Yeah. So like again, it's. I guess it's one of those ones where I think people are just like they just want it's the already pre-angry.
Yeah,
you're already angry, so you want to be angry more. Which I've been there. I'll be there probably tomorrow at some point at something.
Yeah.
It might be the reality of life right now, but yeah, I think when you take a step back and I think long term, that's going to be great for the businesses in that area.
Yep.
Because not only are you going to have more, like you're going to have fans going there to watch open practices when you have that. You're going to have media traveling there. You're going to have again more. It's going to bring a buzz to the community.
Watch parties for playoff games.
Yeah, you could totally have it there if you wanted. Yeah, like it's just. But yeah, construction always sucks. Like I live in Calgary. For those who don't know, I live in the area of Margaloop, and that's been an absolute pain in the ass. Just go back through the barn burner archives and listen to them complain about it.
Yeah,
construction sucks, but yeah,
I deal with it too. Yeah,
yeah. But I don't see like the rink's already there. They're gonna build up a gym. They're gonna build up a some other amenities, it's not going to be that invasive. Like they've got, I'm assuming basically when I look at from off the maps here, there's a pool there. There's like a fitness center that I wouldn't be surprised if they connect that in there and build off of that, as well as the rink. I know people are like, well, there needs to be a double rink. I'm like, again, the Canucks will practice there less than on average, less than once a day during the season, because they'll be gone on trips, and there's also like the game day skates will probably be at Rogers Arena instead of at the practice facility.
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, I still think there's a lot to go through here. On
it's not even official yet. It's just a report, right? But if this is the case and this is where it's going, and everything goes semi-smoothly, as smoothly as construction can go, I don't see the outside of the the grand societal issues of everything costing way too fucking much. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything that can to be too angry about this with.
No. Nope. As far as the rest of the trade deadline, 21 trades on trade deadline day. It was a bit of a slower one than it has been. I think we talked a little bit about some of the reasons why. What were your takeaways in terms of, I didn't want to really use the word winner or losers. I think just thinking about this, we always do that. That's kind of a cliche term, and I think it's better to wait and see what happens before we assume anything. But what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, it just takeaways that James Duthie deserves a freaking award for his ability to stall time when there's nothing going on. That Jeff O'Neill needs to stop being loud for the sake of loud now that he's being fact checked. I liked what the Islanders did. I think that was bringing in Braden Shen. And I think that, and I'll be interested to see how Bobby McMahon does in Seattle.
Yeah. Those two things for sure. I guess for me, I think one of the things that I think people need to get out of their head is that trade deadline is never going to be this spectacular. We're going to get major players. Like, keep seeing all of these expectations, and it's on every social media fan account. We need to have like 5 or 6 trades. You need to get rid of all of these guys, and by the trade deadline, sell. It just doesn't happen at the trade deadline. Like, it's just so unrealistic to expect that. And it's not a failure of management when it doesn't happen, because the reality is, and I think I kind of got involved in one of your conversations where I asked who is really facilitating money in this trade deadline, because there just wasn't a lot to expect to have happen. I guess for me, the interesting ones was Corey Perry returning to Tampa. I think is interesting. And by God, Sean, the Buffalo Sabres may be the fan favorites of these playoffs. That barn, I am very excited for that barn in Buffalo to finally have playoff hockey. And I think it's going to be very fun for them. Logan Stanley has walked right in, and that Buffalo-Tampa game, that was the game of the year. I don't know if you saw it, but that was absolutely insane on all levels. That reminded me of the Flames-Oilers game back in 22 where it was like 9-6 Flames. It was kind of the same thing. That was a lot of fun. And I think the other one that I'm intrigued by is John Carlson in Dylan's Anaheim Ducks. And I'm really intrigued. I'm kind of interested in seeing what Anaheim does in this playoff round. I got Jeremiah mad last night, Sports Beard, because I said that the Oilers are going back to the final. And I do believe that. The Oilers are going back to the final. I know how flawed they are. I know they have terrible goaltending, and they have a massively overrated defense. But I just I don't know if I don't know if Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota can beat them in a 7-game series. I don't know. I just feel like McDavid and Draisaitl will have they'll find a way to do it. They've always found a way, and I feel like they'll do what he can. But yeah,
I think you're just doom prophesizing with that there, Kev.
well, yes, I mean I do have some PTSD, but Vegas isn't a good hockey. Vegas is not playing very well right now. And
The
Rasmus
whole
Anderson,
Pacific is just an absolute shit show, man.
no Pacific team would be in the I think one Pacific team, Vegas, would be in the playoffs right now if in the Eastern Conference. It's really bad. And that's why I think the Oilers have the shot, is because how bad the Pacific is.
I think I think if they do make it, it's not because it's a failure of the Central teams to beat them. It's probably because the Central teams beat up on each other so much that they're broken.
Yeah.
That is honestly that is the why that's open. But also Vegas you can't count out Vegas, and all three of those top Central teams are going to be absolute beasts in the playoffs.
Yes.
So, and all it takes is McKinnon running over the Oilers goaltender, and who knows?
That was an absolutely terrible call. I'm sorry. That was a terrible call. And it's not that, it wasn't a dirty play. It was McKinnon I even tweeted this. I mean, what is he supposed to do? A backflip? How is he going to, is he supposed to do a monkey flip, like a wrestling move on Connor Ingram to get by him? He's not going to. It's just.
No, only Linus Carlson's allowed to do wrestling moves on the ice.
Yes. LKO.
The LKO.
The LKO. Yeah. But yeah, that was a pretty, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Let's quickly put this on the table, and maybe we'll get Tyler's perspective on this. So this was discussed on 32 Thoughts. This has been something that's percolating in my mind. 3-on-3 overtime, under 2 minutes, there's a penalty. What do you think of extending OT toward the entire power play time? Are you for it or against it?
The overtime's already too gimmicky for me. You're talking to a guy who would much rather just see 5-on-5 than a tie.
I'm not a big fan of the shootout.
Honestly, I mean, we're talking about regular season games here. I have no issues 3-on-3 in a shootout for regular season games. Honestly, if push comes to shove, I would much rather see it 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 and then a tie. But if we're stuck with 3-on-3 at this point, at least for regular season, I don't know. I think gimmicking it up that way, I think I don't like it. Just doesn't sit well with me.
All right, whatever. I think it's interesting.
It's interesting. That's an idea that you can definitely see the Jeff Merrick influence on Elliot Friedman with that, because that is a full blown galaxy brain Jeff Merrick idea.
Yeah, actually, the one I like, the one that I've always wondered about is if a power play ends before the period ends. If you start with the power play in the period, I think you should start in the offensive. The faceoff should be in the offensive zone. I'm actually more for that than extending 3-on-3. Extending overtime.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. The older I get, at least with some of this stuff, the more like steadfast in my ways and how I want us to go back to the olden days. But yeah, I don't know. I just maybe it's just because I'm just so done with all these like gimmicky changes for things that are. Is the game broken?
No, not really. It's actually the best it's ever been.
Exactly. I don't know why we need to continue to like. There's nothing wrong with tinkering with it, but this is a drastic change. This is a change that can. Like, could you imagine? What would you rather have, Kev? You're playing for your playoff to make the playoffs, and you take a penalty late, or then you have to go through this system, or just 3-on-3 and then a shootout.
The power play, because I think you have more control. I mean, the shootout is a bit of a luck of a draw. But like, at least if you're killing a penalty, you have an opportunity to, like, you have control of your destiny, right? As it's not down to just shooter versus goalie, right? You have defenders defending the play.
Yeah, NHL shooters typically have a success rate of 30 to 35% in shootouts. And then what are we looking at for power play? Like it's gone up over the past few years. Let's see here. Of course, there we go. Good live podcasting here. Like the power play percentages can be upwards of 33 with the Oilers this year, and all the way down to 16% with the Flames. So I don't know. Like I said, I just think we need to. We're going through this with F1 and the regulation changes, and a lot of people calling it gimmicky. I think this is too gimmicky for me.
That's fair. I think the CFL is going through this conversation as well with some of the changes that they're looking at doing here, and I think, you don't have to make changes for the sake of changes here. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And I the more I think about just on the side note, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of what the CFL is about to do, but that's a whole other. If we ever do a CFL podcast, I'll get into it on a CFL podcast. Anyway, anything else we need to talk about, or?
No, I think we're good, Kev.
All right. How do we follow you?
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on the X machine.
Tyler TNOBLE, Chris SCHNEIDZ, Devin Gord, Devin Holmes Smith on Instagram. Check out the Fireside Chat. We will be back to some Flames chat probably this weekend. I just had some stuff going on last weekend I had to deal with before I could podcast. So we'll be back on that. But check out Fireside Chat. They did do a deep dive on the Flames trade deadline as well. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.